Hey, welcome back to the show, everybody. This is Dr. Homebrew, the first show of the new year, which was 2020. And I'm pretty excited to be here with all of you. We have a few great beers, just a few, not a whole lot. I'm just kidding. We have a couple good beers here to drink for you tonight. Brian, what do we have even? What are our beers?
We've got a coffee milkshake IPA. I think that's our first one of those
That
ever.
sounds disgusting.
Yeah, and an American.
I'm not going to lie.
American Stout as well. That's something you can get behind, I think.
Yeah, that's true. I know Dan is our milkshake guy, and no offense, Dan, but you're not my favorite person anymore.
Oh, man.
Right now.
You have strong opinions about milkshake IPA, Jason?
You didn't know that about me? It's it's a new thing I'm trying to work on. But I'll tell you, one of the guests on this show, I believe it's either Chris coming up. No, I don't think it's Chris. I think it's Christopher, another Chris, sent us a bottle of Bourbon County, whatever the hell it is. Whatever the hell, Bourbon County.
Oh, wow, the Bourbon County Stout?
Yeah.
County.
From 2017.
Oh, badass.
So we got a bottle
Thanks,
of
man.
that.
All right. Let's drink.
That's pretty awesome.
And then I brought this 21A. It's a collab between Magnolia and 21A. It's cucumber and watermelon IPA.
All right.
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah. I thought so too. Sully gave it to me. He's like, look, either you're going to really like it or you're going to fucking hate it. So it's one or the other.
Is that like for Strong Beer Week? Because they always do that Strong Beer Week thing
No,
together.
this is a while ago. I mean, it's only 7% ABV,
okay.
so it's not terrible.
Well, one thing I do like, I'm not sure if I like that beer or not, but I like keeping my equipment cleaned well and sanitized.
Yeah, you talking about homebrew equipment or your personal?
That too.
I use exclusively, I make a paste out of PBW, and I rub it on my testicles. No, thank you to 5 Star Chemicals. You can go to 5starchemicals.com to learn everything you need to do to keep your junk, whatever it is, clean and sanitary. That's right.
Please do not attempt anything JP is suggesting at all.
We're doing a Manscaped live read on this
That's
show,
true,
too.
yeah.
That's,
No, I talk a lot about just other ways to use PBW, and I don't know why. I think just because you can stretch that out to numerous different... I always like something that you can buy for one application, and you can use it for others. So today in my little coffee carafe, I just shook a little PBW out. So in that, I get that like the 1 pound jar, or is it the 5 pound? I think it's the 5 pounder, the big one, the big 5 pounder. Yeah. And I just maybe make like a fingerprint size hole, and I just basically poke a hole with my finger, and that way I can shake it out.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of, scoop it or whatever.
Right.
So because I use it for so much stuff, because I'm not really home brewing right now. So I just sprinkled a little bit, added some hot water in my carafe, cleaned that right up, man. Sat over all day, basically. And it's good stuff.
I love that PBW, man.
Love that Joker. Hey, okay, well let's get Dan on the line, huh? All right. Hopefully he's not listening. It was like, you hated my beer? Like, I didn't even have it yet, dude.
No.
What's happening?
We also need his beer.
There we go.
Hello.
There we go. There we go.
This is United States calling. Are we reaching?
Hey,
See,
Dan.
he keeps hanging up.
Dan, are you there?
Hello. I hear him.
There's a problem with your microphone. Connect to another microphone.
And that's a man
update your
answering.
audio drivers or try restarting your computer.
Well, that's cool.
What the
Can he hear us? No?
No.
Oh, man.
Hello.
Hi. We can't hear you. We can hear you, but you can't hear us.
Yeah. Well, I know you can't hear us, but we'll call you back. Do me a favor, Brian.
Yeah.
Nicecast is not optimized for your Mac and needs to be updated. This app will not work with... Oh, my God. Everything's happening. I don't know what's going on. This studio has
20s,
gremlins,
man.
dude.
The 20s. It's like the year 2020K.
All right.
Yeah.
Same. But both of the cameras I have for other Brian. Char Brian, not Cooper Brian.
Yeah.
Both of them are not working right now.
It
They were working
rebelled
fine.
at my visage.
Okay.
It just
5
didn't
minutes
wanna,
ago.
Yeah. It's why 20K or whatever that would be right
It's
now.
something, man. All right, well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and see if the gremlins in the studio...
About quantum states, but that's a different podcast.
I think it works like 30 times out of like 6 billion or something.
But it would take a patent lawyer to explain it all.
I'm still trying to figure out.
Dan, are you
don't want
there?
your lawyer to explain anything.
Dan, are you there?
Dan can't hear us.
Dan.
Dan.
Fuck. My life is the worst life.
Okay, we're taking a break. JP's going to curse up a storm, and we'll be right back.
Cannot connect. Why would you even want to connect? Check, check, check.
Your message will be played back to
Okay.
you.
Check, check, check. Well, what the fuck? Okay, let's try this. This is dumb. So I'm gonna try to get Dan on before we go back and keep doing this and doing this and doing this.
Hello?
Oh, Dan, can you hear me, dude? Damn it. All right, hang on. Let's see. He's like probably pissed off.
Hello?
Dan.
Yes.
Oh, God bless. God bless Almighty. I did it. I'm sorry, dude. I apologize. We're sort of on a break, but the studio is falling apart, and their settings adjusted in the stupid Skype, and so I had no idea what was going on.
Play all of this. It's good
No,
radio.
Yeah, no,
This is great.
yeah, this is yeah, I know.
Attach the
All right, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. I apologize about that, but I think everything is well. Most things are figured out. We have Dan finally on the phone. Dan, are you there?
I am here,
Oh,
yeah.
thank God.
Nice.
I apologize, man. Thanks for. I know it's late where you are, and the last thing you want to do is get crank called by us.
No, we're all good.
All right, so we have a coffee milkshake IPA, and I have to ask why.
Why'd I brew it?
Yeah, yeah. What were you thinking?
What was the inspiration?
How high were you?
I was completely sober and had nothing in my system. It actually came from, I went up to Pennsylvania to visit some friends, and one of the breweries up there had it, and it was the most fantastic beer I ever had.
Really?
And
Wow.
I figured I need to try to recreate it in North Carolina.
Okay.
Okay. Is this your first stab at the recipe?
It was, yeah. I've done a couple other milkshakes before. Like in the summer, I did a mango peach version, but this is the first coffee version I did.
Cool. Yeah, I liked the Red Card Brewery label on that there. Is that your personal brewery?
Yeah, it's my wife designed the logo. It's just my
Cool.
homebrew name, I guess.
And then Brian has a question he wants to ask you.
I wonder what it is.
What question was this? Oh, yes, sir. We haven't done this for so long, and it's 2020, and Brian's
forgot how to be
asking
doctor.
me, like, he's even mouthing the words like, you're going to ask him what club he's in. What homebrew club are you in? Or are you in a club at all?
I am a lone wolf. I'm not in any homebrew clubs.
So you're one of those guys on a watch list from the AHA or something then?
All right.
Awesome.
I have a question for you, Dan. Should we roll the bottle?
No, you do not have to.
This is not
Okay.
a Hefeweizen, man.
Wait,
Well,
is that a thing with milkshake IPAs, or are you fucking with them?
Well,
By
no.
proxy, messing with me too,
I'm-
because
there's a reason for my question. We'll get into
Okay.
that later.
okay.
Okay.
Well, let's do that. So this is your first stab at it, and what was the brewery's name? that you got this
It
idea
was called
from?
Breaker Brewing Company in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Breaker Brewing Company. Okay, I love
Breaker, yep.
it. Brian is pouring the beers now. Here,
Extra large helping for you, JP.
I'm passing that right over to Brian Shar.
Extra small helping for you with all these.
Thank you very much. Brian Shar, why don't you go ahead and start us out, please?
All right. Yes, I'd be happy to. This is only the second milkshake IPA I've ever had. I had a Pistachio Milkshake IPA at Northern California Homebrew Festival. Gosh, was it year before last? Someone from, I think, Hetchy Hopheads had brewed it, and it was really, I think, a good introduction to that style. But neither here nor there for this one. Aroma. And keep in mind, we just poured this one here, but the score sheet is for a different bottle that I had judged a little earlier today. And if you give me just a second.
And when we
Little sample.
That's pretty similar to what the one I had earlier. So the aroma, the coffee jumps out just as soon as this beer is poured. In fact, when I was pouring this my home earlier, just pouring it into the glass, having my nose like 2 feet away, it's like, wow, that's coffee. So the coffee really jumps out at you, which is nice. It dominates the aroma. There's some green pepper vegetal that is pretty common to be associated with coffee. Was also present, kind of a medium level. The downside of the coffee being so prominent was that I didn't really get any hop or malt aroma, though off aromas either. But it's just coffee dominant. And for any variety of IPA, milkshake, or hazy or whatever, hop aroma is going to be required, at least at a low level. And it just didn't get the hop aroma. So I gave that 6 out of 12 for aroma. Appearance, large head, it's off-white and very persistent. There's some haze from hops. I wouldn't call it a hazy beer. The sample that, we're all just kind of looking at it and pointing. The sample that we just got poured actually has some quite large floaties in here. So I think it was the genesis of Brian's question, and we can you can chat about that when it's his time. Look like little hop leaves or something in there to me. So I'm gonna guess, and we'll talk about your recipe later. I'm gonna guess you dry hopped with whole cone hops. Colors medium gold. Appearance 3 out of 3. Flavor, just like the aroma, initially the flavor is coffee. Coffee dominates all the way through the beginning, mid palate, and finish. And the finish is actually remarkably short. I was kind of surprised about that. This beer is really well attenuated, which I really like. But the downside of high attenuation can be a finish that's just done almost immediately. And that's kind of what I think this beer has. Medium bitterness, I get no hop flavor, low malt flavor that kind of comes out as it warms. Balance is to coffee all the way through. And what I didn't perceive at all was any sweetness or lactose or what have you. Admittedly, I don't have a huge amount of experience with the milkshake IPAs, but one of the distinguishing factors of the milkshake IPA is the use of lactose or some other non-fermentable sweetener to give you kind of that unfermented, unfermented is the wrong word, to give you some sweetness that doesn't ferment out. So flavor, gave it a 10. Mouthfeel, this beer had medium body, low carbonation, really no warming. It lacked the creaminess expected from a milkshake IPA. I mean, this is partly why you have the lactose or maybe some other ingredients that are going to give you that smooth, creamy mouthfeel, and that was just lacking here.
Yeah, I was missing that. That was basically what I noticed right out of the jump. It was dry and not very soft and creamy, I guess, like
right.
those beers are supposed to be.
Exactly. Totally agree. No astringency, which was good.
Mm-hmm.
3 out of 5 for mouthfeel. Overall impression, I think this is a flavorful beer with excellent attenuation. It's well fermented, but it's lacking both the hop flavor and aroma that an IPA needs and the creaminess and sweetness needed for the milkshake version. I would definitely brew this again, especially if you like this style and if you had the one at Breaker that was your favorite beer you've ever had. Definitely do it again. But I would back off, probably 30% on the coffee. Add some more aroma and flavor hops, and definitely add some more lactose next time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even something like little oats, something like that, to give you maybe some of the mouthfeel, like a milkshake. But I think this is well done, trying something that's really kind of difficult. And as much as people talk about it, people haven't. I've rarely encountered a homebrew example of a milkshake IPA. So good on you for trying something different and complex. I gave this 27 total, which is a good score.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go, Brian. What do you think?
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So when I cracked the bottle, this one it actually started creeping up into the neck a little bit more. There might be some. I don't remember that happening when I judged the one last night, but
It didn't happen to mine.
it didn't happen to mine last night. But this one was creeping up into the neck a bit. I think the first one I opened had a little tape around the cap too, maybe to try to keep oxygen out. I don't know if that's gonna do that.
I appreciated the creativity.
It's creative, yeah. But yeah, if oxygen's gonna get in there, I think it'll pass through the tape. I don't know what the.
It was electrical tape, so you never
electrical tape. Maybe it would protect it a little bit. I'm not sure. There are some brewers that take paranoid to a whole new level, and I kind of worry about things like that too much myself. Sometimes I'll do paranoid, weird, rituals as I'm brewing or whatever. But anyway, a nice looking bottle, and it had a nice hiss when it opened up. It was again in the nose, yeah, just low kind of malt and hops behind a big green pepper note up front from the coffee. It's a kind of a sharper coffee aroma, as Brian mentioned. Hops are low, just a little kind of fruity hop in there maybe. Not particularly, a little citrusy perhaps, but I'm not getting anything specific like tropically or mango or anything. It's just kind of a little lime or a little generic citrus. Maybe even a little earthy kind of. It's hard to detect because it's hiding behind that coffee there. There's no in the nose too. I was looking for a hint of something sweet because I'm thinking milkshake. I want a little sweetness in the nose. I'm not getting anything that's hinting at sweetness. But seemed fairly clean. There was no DMS or diacetyl. But yeah, just kind of missed the style for, should definitely have some hops in there. The esters are kind of low. It's not a super fruity beer. And, these beers are known for being juicy and kind of, okay. It was like, well, that wasn't quite what I was expecting, but it does not smell bad at all, I would say. It's appearance-wise, I found just a slight haze, and I was expecting more haze. And the beer's kind of golden colored, has a low whitish head that sticks around fairly well, with mostly finer bubbles. But I was looking for a little bit more haze. It's not milkshakey looking. I mean, some of those milkshake beers can just look like a milkshake. And I likewise have not had extensive experience with them. I don't really seek them out, but I would expect it just to be a little more, thick with haze. Flavor-wise, as expected, that coffee comes right out. It's kind of a biting green pepper-like coffee impression dominating the beer. I believe a green pepper would be kind of a phenolic flavor. I suppose you get some phenolic from the hops too, but I'm not getting much hop in here. Just that green pepper dominates. The sweetness is low. I likewise wanted higher, kind of medium low bitterness, and it seems, I would say, balanced to the malt, if not to the coffee, as Brian said. But yeah, just if you're going malt to hops, it seems maltier than hoppier. Almost no obvious hop notes, and they may have faded. I'm not sure the age on this beer when it was packaged, but we'll talk about that. We are in a new year here, and so it might have been floating around for a while here. But the malt is a lightly sweet, kind of bread-like component. And I guess the finish is semi-sweet, but it falls far short of what I would expect from the, a lactose-filled milkshake IPA. and needs more hops as well. So mouthfeel-wise, medium-bodied, medium-low carbonation, no obvious warmth, no astringency, but it's a bit biting nonetheless, probably from that phenolic pepperiness in there. Just a little bit of a bite and some harshness to it. All the same, it's a drinkable beer with a few actual flaws or defects. It's just the way that coffee is expressing itself is, A, it's too high compared to the base style, and B, it's coming across more harsh. And we'll let JP talk about coffee additions and how to do all
I am the expert.
how to do that properly.
right.
We always rely on him for that. But,
What'd you give it?
I gave it a 26. I think
Okay.
it might be either too aged or the hops have just faded out. I don't know. I'm having trouble getting to Milkshake IPA with this.
Yeah.
It's an interesting beer nonetheless. So just mostly missed the style. The 26 is not because of major flaws.
Yeah,
so
I
really
agree.
Try again.
Yeah, not to put a fine point on it, but I also got a real harsh bitterness out of it too. Like it's an aggressive bitter, and I think these beers aren't supposed to have that. So I feel like either something was lost in translation, or Dan was taking a good stab, and I think he got most of the way there. So
I think it's coffee bitterness.
let's talk about him like he's not here. Dan, what's going on, man?
Yep.
You want to run through the recipe real fast, and then we'll get to some questions and
Sure.
all that kind of stuff. Thanks.
Yeah, the recipe was 35% two-row, 26% Maris Otter, 13% honey, 9% lactose, which turned out to be 2 pounds, 9% of flaked oats, and 9% of flaked wheat as well. And then the hop additions were an ounce of Northern Brewer at 60, 2 ounces of Cascade at 60, 3 ounces of Northern Brewer at 10 minutes, 2 ounces of Cascade at 5 minutes, and then an ounce each of Northern Brewer and Cascade at Flame Out.
Where did you get that recipe from?
I kind of built it myself. The problem was those weren't the hops I wanted to use. I wanted to use Cascade and I think Citra and Simcoe, but my local homebrew shop didn't have either of those, so they just substituted Northern Brewer on me.
Yeah, because that's one. Two things that stand out to me. One is the honey. I think you can kill the honey out of that.
Honey is just going to dry out.
It's going to dry it out.
it's
It's
going to fight against that lactose.
And then part of these milkshake. So here, actually, let me ask a question: is milkshake the same as New England IPA? Is it any IPA and milkshake IPA? Are they technically the same? What's the differentiation? Because I don't actually really know.
Yeah.
Do we know that in 30 seconds or less?
Milkshake's going to rely more heavily on the lactose and try to give the impression of a thick, chewy, kind of milkshakey take on beer. There's also beers that taste like kind of creamsicles where they go with the really fruity direction and
because that's what I think of in any IPA. So it's basically
any IPA is going to be quote juicy. And it's not necessarily going to be creamy. It's going to have to be a silky mouthfeel, but it's not the idea. Just like Brian was saying, it's going to lack the lactose and maybe the body.
Yeah,
and a
and
milkshake doesn't have to be hazy. I don't believe.
I think it does. I think that's part of it. I don't know.
It's not in the guidelines.
I think it needs to be a little bit hazy.
There's no guideline for milkshake IPA, but there is. They have a tentative one for New England IPA. But I think milkshake they can use vanilla and they can create. They want to create kind of creamy, full-bodied texture like a milkshake.
Okay.
So.
And what's interesting is
bold
opacity. The first thing was the honey, like I said, was going to dry out. But second is the hops. I think the hops play a big part in these style of beers. So and I know you said that your homebrew shop didn't have it, and that's totally fine. I've messed around with recipes before where the hops weren't really the ones I wanted to use, but I just was focusing on the grain bill anyways. But I think for this beer, I think maybe you should have waited for the juicier ones, I guess, or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
you mentioned Northern Brewer, and I totally get that now because it just blends with the coffee so much.
It definitely would, right? Because the tannin, the sort of a woody, feel, and I think would accentuate some of those coffee tans. Let's talk about your coffee real fast. How did you do that?
What I did was I took 4 ounces of an organic, what brand was it? It's Jim's Witch's Brew organic coffee, and I coarse ground it up and then just added it to the fermenter for 24 hours after cold crash.
Yeah. Do you know what roast it was? Like what I don't
It was
know.
a dark roast.
It was a dark roast. I would not have guessed a dark roast on that. Because typically for me, like the lighter roast coffees give that kind of green pepper thing. So, and I know a lot of people have had success with the coarse ground, adding the grounds to it. I never did. I would make a double strength, batch of coffee.
Cold brew or
Cold brew, and
Yeah.
then just pour it in. That's
Gotcha.
That's
keep the grounds out of the beer.
yeah, and that's typically was going to be my like go-to answer. But on the session specifically, the past couple of years, we've had a few breweries that do coffee additions different ways, and they all come out really, really good. So who can really say? But try making a batch of cold brew with that like double strength concentrate, and adding it in next time, or make a little tincture so you can add it in, and try your coffee additions different ways so you can get rid of that green pepper, because it does sort of distract from any hop aroma you might have had.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Were there dry hops? Did you mention any dry hops?
No, there was no dry hops in this
Right.
one.
So, yeah, the other thing I would say, too, is you had a lot of bittering hops, and a lot of the New England IPAs will rely on solely Whirlpool additions and beyond. So, not even adding any hops to the 60-minute boil. If any, just a pellet or something to, help with the hop break. But it's, beyond that, it's just going for aroma only. And you get some bitterness out of that, too. In a Whirlpool, you'll get a little bit of alpha acid conversion, but it's minimal, and it keeps it soft, keeps it under control and less bitter than this one is. I think that some of the bitterness is coming from the hops, and not just the coffee.
Yeah.
What about water? Did you do any chloride additions or any water treatment? Do you know what your
I did not yet. The
Okay.
only thing, I've just started getting into the water chemistry side
Yeah.
of it. The only thing I did was run it through a charcoal filter.
Right.
And
Okay.
It's just regular city water from my
Regular city water. Okay.
Okay.
So it's probably more of a
Treatment plant,
sulfate heavy water mix, and to soften up these beers, a lot of times what they do is to go for like a 2-to-1 chloride to sulfate ratio. So if you're,
Okay.
just do the water math, and if your sulfate's at 35, go for 60 something with the chlorides, and the chlorides just accent the malt smoothness and richness, and kind of play off the hops a little bit too. I think they just let the hops shine without being harsh and biting. Whereas if you have a really sulfate heavy water or a Burtonized water, the hop bitterness plays a lot differently, more like an English pale ale, kind of a crisper, rougher bite to them. So yeah, work with the water chemistry too, and that's another trick they use. There's some good articles about brewing these things out there, and talk to the brewery. Sometimes they're pretty open about sharing some of their fun little secrets or what they do. And,
Absolutely.
yeah, a lot of times you get a lot of good
I
info
gotcha.
there.
Quick
Do you
question
think
about
age
your
would have anything to do with this too? Because it was brewed on
Yeah.
September 29th.
Yeah, are you tasting one with us now by chance?
Some
or-
of it.
No, I actually ran out of it.
You ran
Actually,
out,
all
yeah.
my friends drank it on me.
I mean, maybe a little bit, but what do you think? 10%? 20%
From
maybe?
September?
Yeah, it's not that far away.
Well, yeah, I mean these are you want to worry more about freshness with these than with other beers. If you
Yeah.
drink it within the first 1 to 1.5 months, it's going to taste a lot better than it will 3 months down the road. So
Yeah.
that could very well be detracting to it, in my opinion.
You got to try it again, because honestly, Dan, before the show started, actually when the show started, I was told that it was a coffee milkshake IPA, and I threw up in my hat. But drinking what you have, it's actually a combination that I can understand now. I can understand how that would work. So I really kind of want you to brew it again and send it in, because I want to taste how this works, because I see it.
Okay.
I see it, and I want to be wrong, which is I've never said that before.
Yeah. So you did good with the oats and the wheats. I would drop the honey and the early hop additions, and just dump everything in the last, in the Whirlpool.
Yeah, change it
Yeah.
up a little bit. Do you have any questions for the guys, Dan? Anything you want to get
no,
over?
I think we're good.
Okay.
You guys answered everything I had.
Hell yeah.
All right.
That's what we like to hear.
Well, thanks for sharing. It's a fun beer to try. And
Yeah.
I find these beers to be challenging too. It takes a couple tries sometimes to get them right. And my wife loves the hazy beers, but I'm still working on getting one to her particular taste. Oh yeah, just give me the field work. Give me this
Yeah.
in house.
All right, Dan, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. And yeah, let us know for sure when you take another stab at it.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right,
Hey,
man.
thank you.
See ya.
Thanks.
Yep.
Oh, you know what we didn't talk about is yeast, did we? He didn't mention yeast. We didn't talk about it.
Oh, shoot, no.
Damn
Call
it.
him back.
Oh, well, yeah. Hey, Dan, leave me alone. I'm done talking to you guys. All right, we're going to take another break, everybody, which is my favorite segment of the show. And we're going to get Chris on the line, and he's going to tell us about his American Stout, which I love American Stouts, baby. I'm on the Stout hype train. I've been buying Sierra Nevada Stout because that is out now, and it's very delicious.
Is that out at like the local retailers now?
Yeah.
Awesome. No, I love Sierra Nevada Stout.
No plug needed, baby.
I haven't bought that at like the Safeway for like 20 years, man. I remember getting that at like the Safeway in Huntington Beach in the 90s.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Man.
All right, everybody. Hang on. We'll be right back. This is Dr. Homebrew. Don't go anywhere because we can't either. All right, everybody, thanks for sticking with us. This is Dr. Homebrew, and what I should have done during the break, and I did not, is dial up Chris, but I'm going to do that right now. And you said, Brian, that we got the answer on the yeast.
Yeah, he
on
used
Dan's last
the
beer.
Safe Ale 04, the S04, the English ale yeast. So.
Okay. See, that's what I don't understand. Should it have been like a more New England IPA yeast? Or,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people use the London 3 or the Fog
should it be that?
Barbarian.
Because I think SF04 is, what is that?
It's an English
Is
ale
04 English?
yeast,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's a little malty, but still will dry it out maybe a little bit more than you would want in a beer like. Anyway,
Yeah.
we're moving on here. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How's it going, guys?
Hey, good, man. How you doing?
Good?
Good, thanks.
Awesome. Well, we have an American Stout. I'm really excited for this. I was telling the boys I love me some stouts. I'm hype for the stout beer, man. Have you brewed this beer before?
I actually brewed some sweet stouts in the past, and I've never done American Stout, so I figured why not give it a shot.
Cool. Any particular American Stout that inspires you or you wanted to emulate?
No, I actually kind of just took my base recipe of the sweet stout and then kind of read the style guidelines and try to make an actual American Stout. So I wasn't really trying to go after anything other than just kind of the flavor profile and what the style guidelines said. So kind of just took it from there.
Nice.
De-sweetened it. Yanked out
Yeah,
the
pretty much,
lactose.
yeah.
Mhm.
Just a little bit. Oh, thanks, Brian. All right, we're pouring it off here a little bit. Here, let me hand that to Brian Shar. And Brian Cooper, why don't you start us out, please, young man?
All right. Thank you. Yes. A nice hiss when we opened it up. It's a pleasant, rich maltiness to it with a pretty big roast up front and a light chocolate nose below that. A low citrusy hop, I would say, kind of out of the way, but appropriate level. These can have a little bit of hop to them. Medium-low fruity esters, kind of dark fruits, not very intense at all, though. And it's somewhat coffee-like in here. It's just kind of clean and inviting. But I also found kind of some hints of a little bit of like charcoal, a little sharper ashiness, not super intense in the nose. In the appearance, very dark brown beer, brownish black pretty much, and nearly opaque. Seems clear at the corners, though. You can actually see some little garnet highlights if you kind of put it up to the light. Mostly fine, creamy-looking foam stand, and kind of looks like it should. So I gave it a 3 out of 3 for appearance. Getting into the flavor, very bold, roasty, massive malt with a somewhat of ashy, biting note. Getting bitter chocolate and coffee. Low hop bitterness. The beer seems cleanly fermented, so nicely done there. It's definitely balanced to the malt and those roasty malts especially. It has a smoky charcoal-like character that's lingering into the aftertaste that to me is detracting a little bit. But otherwise, it's in the territory for American Stout. It's just a little too big and bold for what you expect there. And mouthfeel-wise, medium-bodied, medium carbonation, a bit of a biting astringency from the darkest malts. It's just not very smooth or creamy. And there's some hints of a little alcohol warmth there. It's possibly up there in the alcohol, but not super strong.
Like me.
Yeah.
Not super strong like me.
But it lets you know there's a little alcohol there. It's not a wimpy beer. Overall, it's a very tasty and very big stout. But I would say you just need to back off of that roast and some of the other darkest grains a fair amount here, or else just go big and imperialize it. It's a very it's a good base, and you brewed it cleanly and brewed it well. I could see this standing up to more alcohol without adding a lot more roast or anything. But it's kind of a fun beer to taste. It could stand up, to a lot more alcohol, and you'd have to just, of course, use more yeast too if you went that direction. Added more base malts, or got it up there gravity wise.
Yeah.
That's where I would suggest going with this one, just because it's so rich and so strong, it could stand up to that. But if you want to turn it into American Stout, definitely back off those. I think your hops are in a decent place. Everything else is decent. It's just that roast is super sharp. And watch out also for your mash pH and for over sparging. If you're doing all grain, you want to be really careful not to have all those acidic grains drag your
pH out of whack.
way down and just extract the harsh tannins that you can get from some of those richest malts. But nicely brewed and nicely fermented, it seems like. And
what do you give it?
I give it a 31.
Nice. All right, Brian Shar.
Yeah, I love American Stout. This is one of my favorite styles, and I typically I didn't do it this past year, but I'll do a Christmas Stout typically every year, which is an American Stout. So I've done this a lot, and I've encountered some of the pitfalls in years past you can do when you're brewing this.
Yeah, I will say that as a novice home brewer, novice is when you're dumb, right? As a novice home brewer, like people tell you, just if you can't really do anything, brew a dark beer. Brew a stout or a porter. They're much easier to deal with than like a pale ale or an IPA, and that is not true. They're equally as challenging, if not more challenging, because you have more ingredients that can stick out a little bit if you got to go overboard or whatever. So it's not easy.
There's a lot to hide behind, but there's
a lot to hide behind, and that's why, because at More Beer, that's what we would always recommend. Just make a stout or a porter for your first beer, because you can hide a lot of your fermentation issues, and you can. But when you're building recipes, that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, and I'll play along with our derail here for a second, and I agree with that when you're making a traditional like English stout, because there's not much. It's English ale yeast. It's supposed to be fruity, so it plays to the fact that beginning homebrewers don't have temp control.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of hops, and what hops there are your Fuggles, yeast, EKG, stuff like that goes with the dark malt that they've learned from hundreds of years of experience. But some of the issues you can have with an American Stout is much more challenging, I think. And part of it comes from the fact that dark malt and hops, and specifically roast malt and some hops, do not play well together.
Right.
In my experience, none of the C hops work with roasted malt. Centennial, Cascade, Columbus.
Yeah.
I have terrible, and Brian's looking at me like I'm high, but as far as he knows, I don't know. But
I think that's just his look. He has resting high face.
I liked hoppy beers, and then early in my brewing career, I wanted to make a stout, and I just said, "Well, what if we hop it up? Like, let's make it really hoppy too, and see what that tastes like." Bad idea.
Yeah, and I've had like a lot of practice, sort of fine tuning. Like my American Stout, I tend to go heavy on the chocolate and pale chocolate malts, and I just keep kind of making it more like the chocolate as the years go by. and I've tended to land on like the nugget type hops. Avoid the sea hops. I haven't played with some of the newer school, New Zealand quote tropical fruity hops, but it's going to require a lot more experimentation when you're designing a recipe for American Stout, when you're trying to pick out a hop flavor and aroma, because so many of those hop flavors do not go with roast flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the resiny bite kind of fights against or clashes with that cocoa-y and roasty bite. It's too much.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
All right, Brian.
So talking specifically about this beer, Aroma, definitely get a lot of dark malt, roast malt at a high level. I got kind of a medium level of floral hops, no diacetyl or off aromas. I did get a slight rubber character. And kind of going to my point, this to me is something that you get with some, and when we get to your recipe, I'll be curious what hops you used. That kind of a little bit of a hint of a tire rubber type of character comes from hops and roast not playing well together. And that to me is kind of a byproduct of hop selection with roast. And kind of, I'll hold off on that comment to the overall impression. Still, I gave it 9 out of 12 for Aroma. I thought it was nicely done. Appearance 3 of 3. Head is dark brown and persistent. Excellent clarity to the extent you can tell in such a dark beer. Color's dark brown. If you hold it up to the light, if you casually look at this beer, it's black like a stout should be. So well done. Flavor. Initial flavor is dark malt and roast malt with some hop bitterness, just immediately almost aggressive at a high level. And I'm not getting that quite so much in this sample.
Okay.
But I still get it. Actually, I still get that quite a bit. It was maybe a little more aggressive in the bottle I had at home, but it's almost an aggressive bitterness at a very high level.
It's a bitter chocolate and coffee coming through.
Yeah, exactly. I get a little bit of a little bit of a rubber taste, very low, not as much as I would get that in the Aroma. There's a little bit of that there. Again, I believe that's an interaction of the hops and the roast malt. Very well attenuated. I really love the attenuation on this beer. It's very dry. Finish is long and balanced toward bitterness and roast. So 12 out of 20 for flavor. Mouthfeel is medium warming. Body is medium. Low carbonation. Not really as creamy as you might want a stout to be, but this is an American and not a British stout. I don't think it has to be creamy. I get a slight astringency, and it may simply be it may not be astringency. It may just be kind of a byproduct of the very high bitterness and the roast malt that gives a perception of astringency. And I don't think it's the... I kind of wrestled with this because astringency is a very specific mouthfeel term that is different from a perception of a lot of roast or a perception of a lot of bitterness. But still, I got a perception of a slight astringency from this beer.
These beers can have a little bit of roast-derived astringency, but it shouldn't be too much. You got to keep it restrained. I'd say this is a little too much.
Yeah, thanks for helping me out there, Brian. But I give 4 out of 5 for mouthfeel. Overall impression, I gave it a 7. It's a clean beer. It's well attenuated, excellent fermentation. But I think, as I was talking about earlier, hop choices in a dark beer with a lot of roast malt are really hard, and they require a lot of experimentation to just figure out what works. It's not even what I was talking about before is the varietal in combination with the roast malt. It's the fact that the roast malt has a bitterness to it on its own that when you're building a recipe, that roast malt doesn't get... There's no IBUs associated with it, but it does give you a perception of bitterness. And I think if you bitter the beer in accordance just with what ProMash or Beersmith or one of the calculators will tell you, you'll get an IBU level that's in the range for the style, but it may not the beer overall may end up having a perception of bitterness that's higher than you might want. And I think
Sure.
that's kind of where we are right here with this one.
Okay.
I would back off on the bittering hops. I'd back off a little bit on the roast malt. I would, just because it's what I do. I love some pale chocolate malt in these. Maybe I'll be curious if there's already some in there.
Pale chocolate's the only chocolate malt you should ever use in your entire life. I'm going to say that right now. I'm going on record.
I disagree with that, but not strongly.
Well, that's okay. You're wrong.
And I would, I would play with hop varieties. But I think overall it's a good beer. I gave it a score of 35, which is in the very good range. I'm sitting here drinking it. It's got a couple of minor issues, but I'd call this a very good beer.
It's clean.
Yeah, I would give it a 36. I don't normally judge beers, but I really like this beer.
But when
I do, I give them 36s. I'm not gonna again put a fine point on it, but the head is amazing.
It is, yeah.
So I think it's
really, really
it's a
great.
very, very well made beer. But yeah, like the guys are saying, and you probably know, there's a little bit of a recipe issue. I think it's just a little too aggressive, and maybe that's why I don't like American stouts so much, because they tend to sort of be on the aggressive side with the roasted malts, and that's why my oatmeal stout never really does super well beyond a 36 or a 38 in competition, because it doesn't have any roast, and that's what I like about it. I don't really like stouts with a lot of roast. But this is pokey and edgy a little bit. Yeah. So if you can rein that down a tad, because there is that burnt rubber. It's almost like when someone peels out on their tires. It's like smoking rubber.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that is more tied to the roast malt than anything. So that's my repetition of what everybody else said.
We're all scoring it in the very good range of 30 to 37.
No, I think it's it's very good, Chris. Thank you for sharing.
Excellent. It's just mostly just balanced stuff.
Yeah, there's some easy. I think there's some easy paths here to getting this stuff 40 plus.
For sure. Chris, what's the recipe?
All right, well that's good. It's kind of funny. You guys nailed a lot of pretty much the recipe in itself. So
we're professionals.
It's a 2.5 gallon batch. I do have the Pbw, this Ameican.
Oh wow,
nice.
So I did 7.5 pounds of Maris Otter, a half pound of American roasted barley, a half pound of American Crystal 40, and a half pound of American chocolate malt. I didn't do the pale chocolate. Sorry, JP.
You got to do it, man.
I couldn't find it. I know. I got to try it out.
That British pale chocolate is just so smooth, man. It's so smooth. It's so good.
Okay, I'll definitely look into it.
Please do.
And then I did a single infusion for 90 minutes at 152. I had 2 hop charges, one at 60 minutes of Columbus, and that was just under an ounce. And then I did my last one at 5 minutes left in the boil of a half ounce of Centennial. So Brian Char pretty much nailed it with the hops there. So I was really, and I tasted rubberness. I didn't know what I was tasting, but I was like, there's something weird about it. I don't know. I just chalked it up to the roasted barley and the chocolate. Maybe I had too much. I'm still learning the Pbw, so I thought maybe I did something with the circulation and all that. Maybe that brought out some astringency. I wasn't really too sure.
Yeah. Well, you had Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll save my John for the afterwards. Go ahead. Sorry.
And then yeast I used with the WLP 090 Super San Diego yeast. Fermented that under controlled fermentation at 64 for 10 days, and then I cold crashed it, and then I had some issues with my kegs, and so I had to bottle condition it and had a few issues. So I'm actually pretty happy with what you guys told me. So and so I'm interested to hear what you guys would say, like based off my grain bill of what maybe I need to tweak of backing it off, maybe taking it by like a half a pound to a quarter pound on the barley and the chocolate. But I'm interested to see what you guys have to say.
I mean, easily, I would put half a pound in like 5 gallons or 10 gallons. But that's me. You know, my palate's different than yours. I would for sure start with reducing that to a quarter pound for the roasted barley and see where you are, because I think that's really your sticking point. I think the chocolate's probably fine. If you can get your hands on that English pale chocolate, that stuff is gold.
Switch that in for the other half of the roasted barley. Put a half of
because you can mix that American chocolate and that pale chocolate, and you can kind of layer your flavors. I know a lot of people making stouts still do that with crystal malt. They'll take their crystal edition and they'll break it up between like a 40 and like a 60 or a 75, because you can kind of get that range of sort of mouthfeel, mid palate flavors like that. So feel free to play with stuff like that. Feel free. I'm going to allow you, Chris, to play with your own recipe.
That yeast dried it out quite a bit too. I think it would. And there's not a lot of fruitiness there. You fermented at a fairly low temperature. I think maybe a little more fruitiness. You could bump up the fermentation temp a little bit, and or play with a different yeast that's going to give it a little more fruitiness. I mean, stick with the American, but that San Diego kind of is made for drying out IPAs, and I don't know, for stouts it's okay, but change out the hops and try something different there.
I think it's a workhorse.
Yeah,
I'll talk to you about it.
Columbus is that's a challenging hop to use anyway.
Columbus is so variable. I'm not a fan of the danky aspect of Columbus, but
I'm
Columbus
not either,
is like
honestly.
Simcoe in that it's Columbus or like Summit even more so, because they're so variable depending on when they get harvested. And a lot of times the homebrew stuff that you get is kind of the dregs that the pros don't like. So
it can be
an issue with Columbus. I think that I'm also a Pico owner. Love the Pico. Pico, whatever, Pico.
Yeah. You say Pico, though, and we laugh at you.
Through the computer and slap me or something.
If anybody would, she would do it.
I think she would.
Yeah.
But I don't... I don't see you mentioned something about the astringency maybe being from the Pico. I don't see that. I see that as being purely a recipe issue. And I like with these guys, I would put maybe in a 10-gallon batch of my American Stout, maybe a pound of roasted barley, maybe.
Right.
And that's 10 gallons. So I think going down to like a quarter pound for 2.5. That's
reasonable territory.
That's reasonable. In fact, I've been kind of dropping it, on like normalizing the 10 gallons, more like going to half a pound, because you want to have a little roasted barley, a little black barley goes a long way.
Yeah.
And you can really overdo it, and I think that's where that interaction, especially with the Columbus and that roasted barley, I'm gonna say that's where you're getting a lot of that rubber flavor from.
I agree. What's the ABV on this, Chris?
Just over 7%. OG was 1068 and Final Gravity was 1014.
Damn.
Nice.
Seemed a little beefy there. That's
all right.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Do you have any questions for me, preferably, probably, or maybe the other guys too, because they might know a thing or two?
No, I think I'm pretty good with this one.
Okay.
7%.
It kind of makes sense. It's kind of pretty straight to the point. So I'm glad you guys pointed out everything that I was tasting. I just couldn't explain it. I just didn't know what I was tasting. I think, but there's just something off a little bit, and I don't know what it is.
Man,
that's great.
That is the whole premise of the show. So honestly, I'm very glad that we were able to do that for you and sort of hone it in for you.
Do you have it on the public recipes shared?
Yes, I do.
Cool. What's the name of the brew?
It's called No Stout About It.
No Stout About
Hell
It.
yeah,
Wow.
that's almost as good as Don't Pout Stout.
Yeah, our Pico Brew listeners can go out and brew this one too, and change it how they want. So
that's right.
Have some fun.
All right, Chris.
I finished mine.
Cool.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll talk to you. Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Oh, damn it! I didn't ask him if he was in a homebrew club. I didn't ask my
Brian.
signature question. What's going on tonight?
I don't know,
I had to
man.
remind you the first time.
I know.
What's this bonus beer here? What
This
do we
is
got?
the 21st Amendment and Magnolia collab. It's called the Pink and the Green Cucumber and Watermelon IPA.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know where you can get it. I got it in San Leandro because I know the owner of the company. So tra la 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 la.
The pink and the green.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, Sully was like, either you're gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. Bev, do you want some? Okay. She said
I'm
no,
not a
but she's
big
not gonna
fan
get me.
of cucumber or watermelon.
Well, I don't know why you're going to drink this then. All right, everybody,
They
thanks a
both have
lot
their place.
for tuning in. I really appreciate it. This has been Dr. Homebrew. The month is January. The year is 2020. The time is now, or at least it has just passed, because you just listened to the show. Hopefully, by the time this hits the airwaves, the world will still be intact, and big babies won't blow us all up. So
If
that's
not,
my
this
wish.
was kind of a waste of a show.
That's right. That's my wish from me to the rest of humanity. And until next time, we'll see you guys later.
Happy New Year.
Hey, welcome everybody. It's Dr. Homebrew. Thanks for tuning in to this weird-ass show where you are our friend. You're our best friend. We're going to invite you into our club.
We're going to
and-
invite you to send us beer.
That's right.
And we're going to drink it and tell you about it while you don't drink it with us. And we just tell you about stuff we're drinking that
That's
people
right.
gave us.
And then you have to call us uncle. That's the other
How
part of
cool
it.
is that?
Yeah.
We're like your best friend at the bar that really knows his beer, or at least pretends like he really does.
That is 100% true. Brian, how do people send us beer, by the way?
Well, you would email Brian at thebrewingnetwork.com. And I got that email before Brian, too, joined us. So I think if he gets his email on the Brewing Network, it'd have to be Brian 2 or Shar or Esquire or something different.
Right.
But
I haven't had a Brewing Network email in like a year, and it's worked out okay. So I'm probably fine.
I think you're doing all right. You're
Just,
better than most, Brian. I'll tell you that right now.
if you want to contact Brian, just go on schmuck.com.
Look for my picture on a bus bench somewhere near you with injured ? Yes.
I can't help you with that, but
Eager car chasing lawyer.
if you have an
Exactly.
idea that you want patented, please contact me.
Shar at crosspondlaw.com.
There we go. Free plugs.
There you go. I plugged my pluggables.
There you go.
Have you invented a square version of the wheel?
That's right.
Don't call me with that one. That's I have some other guys I can refer you to on that.
On the show today, we have Christopher with a Pilsner, and we have another Chris with an American Strong Ale, which apparently is an Arrogant Bastard clone or something like that.
Yeah, I
right,
believe
Brian?
it is. We'll have to talk to him about that.
And that's Chris. We had on the previous show too with the American Stout. So if this beer is anything like the American Stout, I think we're gonna like it.
Chris is a repeat offender, as we like to call them here on the show.
That's right. But before we get to any of our offenders, I want to thank 5 Star Chemicals. Go to 5starchemicals.com. They will help you. That's just it. If you have any questions at all, if you need help with like rent control, or if you want to need help picking out a pressure washer, if you need help changing your oil, if you need help sighing into the microphone, they can help you with all of that kind of stuff. So go to 5starchemicals.com today, right now. Do it. Look at all the fun stuff that they have. There's actually a lot of technical information on there too, and they do a lot of write-ups on how to use their products properly and all that kind of stuff.
And
so
you'll see in
get
all
educated.
the home brewing or brewing related shows. I'm sure they do the craft brew one, two.
Craft Brewers Conference.
Craft Brewers
I think that they
Conference
do.
thing.
Yeah.
I saw them there last year. I think.
Just go up to them and say hi. I find that when I go up and talk to them, I always have good chemistry with those people.
They're nice. They're nice people.
Nice chemistry.
No, I get it.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
That's pretty basic.
Nah.
I'm in
Damn
charge.
it, I don't have a chemistry pun, and I'm the last one, and I don't have one handy.
That's fine. Howling into the microphone is equally as good as a chemistry pun.
Damn it.
You know what? I think I know for a fact we're drinking a beer, but I forget which Chris sent it. I think it's the first Chris, and we are drinking. What are you knocking on Bev's window?
Chris V. We're looking for Chris V.
No.
For the pills.
But he sent along a bottle of Bourbon County Stout to the Goose Island, whatever, from 2017.
That's.
And so I decided let's just open it and we'll sip on it along this journey of homebrew that we have.
Our
together.
journey of self-discovery and self-actualization.
Yeah.
Via homebrew.
It's not bad. It's still very, very hot, but I mean, I can see why people like it. I don't know. I think I don't want to like it because it's Goose Island, because it's Budweiser. I want to not like it because of that.
No, it's a well-made product. I get a little as it ages, you get a little more of the soy sauce kind of character in that.
Yeah.
It's
coming, but there's a very nice chocolate character coming through that is quite pleasant.
I agree that it's still a little hot, but it's still young for a bourbon barrel, a big bourbon beer like this. This is still pretty young.
Yeah, it's 3 years old. Actually, I think technically 2 because it comes out later in the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, let's take a quick break, everybody, and then we're going to get right back on the line with Christopher, and he's going to tell us all about his Pilsner. We're going to drink it. We're going to have a good time, and we're going to walk away best friends. Hang tight.
We're going to have a good time? We're having a good time now,
We'll be right back. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for sticking with us. On the phone, we should have Christopher. Christopher, are you there?
I am. Hey.
Hey, what's going on, dude?
Not much. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Just sitting here in a very warm and sweaty studio with 2 other men.
And boy, it's late at night here.
Yeah.
It's
a good time.
We're staring down the 10 o'clock hour here.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it is a pretty good time, man. Let me grab a bottle of Pilsner, and Brian Cooper can fill some time. Hang on a second.
Wait, I got the second bottle here. So we had one with kind of a low fill, but do you have another one?
Sure.
Okay, yeah.
3 bottles, baby.
There
Chris
we go.
knows.
Actually, while you're killing time talking about bottle fill, Christopher, where are you in a homebrew club?
I'm not.
So you are yet another lone wolf on the AHA's watch list of potential homebrew offenders. All right.
Yeah.
You got
Don't
it.
flag me.
Or
Yeah.
potential homebrew
That's right.
stars. I mean, the TSA might have to give you a hard time getting on a plane if you're a lone wolf homebrewer. I'm just saying.
Right.
Hell yeah, they would. So Pilsner, have you done a Pils before? Is this a new beer for you?
This is the first Pilsner for me.
There we go. I like that. Congratulations. How long have you been homebrewing?
About 4 years.
Okay, 4 years first pills. Yeah, that's acceptable.
Is it your first lager?
No, I did an Oktoberfest last year, but this is the best lager I've done.
Wow,
Cool.
so
Okay.
just your second lager. Okay, well done.
Wow.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, Brian Cooper, you look ready. Your engine is revved, baby.
Yes.
Let's go. Why don't you start us off?
Yeah, on the nose, I'm getting so I had a nice hiss when we cracked the bottle there. Getting a bit of a honey-like note in the nose, but also kind of right up front there's some sulfur going on, and you can have some sulfur in lagers. That's fine. A lot of times it's some DMS, but in this case I'm getting a little bit of that the hydrogen sulfide sulfur. It's an eggy kind of a note. But I set it down for a little bit, and I came back and smelled it later, and that's a really kind of fleeting aroma that can dissipate pretty quickly. So when we first opened it and poured it, and I hope Brian poured his and smelled it right away.
I did. I smelled it.
It'll fade
did not
before you know it's
melt
there.
it.
So I'm like, was that really there? Okay. The malt is a nice low kind of graham crackery note. It has a low floral hop note, no obvious esters, not getting any buttery diacetyl or acetaldehyde, any green apple.
I did get some sulfur, but I did not feel that any of it was inappropriate. I think maybe my tolerance or acceptance of sulfur in lagers may be higher than Cooper's. I
Did
don't
you
know.
say acceptance?
Oh,
Eggs.
Jesus Christ.
I didn't, but I will retcon that I did. I have a higher acceptance of hydrogen sulfide. Maybe as a single guy, I just eat eggs that I don't go to the stores. I'm finishing that dozen, damn it. I'm finishing that Costco pack, no matter how stale they are. But no, I think that, frankly, I think that sulfur note is important for a lager, just to kind of show that it is a lager. I mean, I associate that with a lager beer.
Lager yeast kicks off a good amount of sulfur. When you're smelling a healthy, vigorous lager fermentation, man, that it can smell gnarly sometimes.
Oh, yeah. You're thinking, oh, my God, what have I done? And that's just kind of what it does. So, but Aroma gave 9 out of 12. Appearance was a 3. It's crystal clear, low head that is very persistent, very light straw color, well done, in 3 out of 3. Flavor, the initial flavor is a sort of a crisp, crackery Pils malt with medium bitterness that comes up to balance in mid-palate. Get a medium spicy hop flavor. It's well attenuated, which I really like, especially for a lager. I mean, that just shows that your process, you really have good control of your fermentation process and your fermentation regime. You're pitching enough yeast, you're fermenting at the right temperature, you're fermenting for long enough that this tastes like a lager, and it is well attenuated. It's not some kind of sweet mess. So extremely well done with the fermentation. I mean, we've all had homebrewed lagers that are just not finished, and they're not pretty. The finish is long and balanced, tilted slightly toward bitter, but overall pretty balanced. I think compared to what it's interesting. I haven't read the guidelines for German Pilsner for a while. When you look at the 2015 guidelines, it says hop bitterness dominates the flavor. I mean, it should be a high bitterness that dominates. That's kind of an interesting phrase. And I think that I'll save a little bit of this comment for the overall impression, but a little more hop bitterness, I think, would be desirable. Flavor, it gave it a 13. Mouthfeel, 5 out of 5. Body is medium low. I mean, I don't... Brian talked about it being a little watery. I don't know that I agree. Did you say watery, Brian? Am I putting words in your mouth? I remember you saying that. I don't know that I would agree with it being watery, but kind of, I gave it 5 out of 5 for mouthfeel. I'm not going to change that now. I might step that down a point because the body is a little lighter than I might want.
It is.
Think like Leifsbier or American lager kind of lightness, you know?
Well, right.
Yeah.
And it's consistent with my comment with Aroma that the aroma overall is a bit low. So I think that maybe, again, I'm going to keep it at a 5. Thinking about this a little more, I might have backed this off to like a 4. Carbonation is great. It's medium high where you want it to be for this beer. And it's hard hard when you're packaging homebrew, either if you're bottle conditioning or from a keg, to get the carbonation this high. So that's good job on that. Get slight warming, just a hint. Could have been imagining that. It might have been, maybe it was that Bourbon County Stout. I don't know. It may have been that late, late coming to the warming. Don't think this is creamy or astringent, which certainly a Pilsner should never be creamy.
Right.
That's not appropriate for that, nor should it be astringent. And I always think it's kind of interesting. You look at the mouthfeel, and like, are you having to pick one of the two? I mean, a lot of beers shouldn't be either one. But any event, 5 out of 5. Overall impression, gave it a 7. I think it's a well-made beer with excellent attenuation, especially for a lager. I think there's good firm bitterness in this beer. I think a little more bitterness would push this more to the really crisp Pilsner. That's kind of the platonic ideal of a German Pils. I don't think it has to be like an IPA level, but I think there's maybe a little more, maybe 10% more might get you to where this is. Because it's crisp, but I think I want just a little bit more personally.
I think you could do it with water adjustment as well. And if this water is very soft, like a Czech water, you could add a little more sulfate to the mix to let it play off of the hoppiness. And I think that's kind of what they distinguish, in the guidelines. The comparison is between this and the Czech premium pale lager, which is where the Germans, got this from.
Yeah, and that's very right.
Their water's a little more, sulfate rich and not as mineral free as the Czech water. So the hops play differently. They're probably using close to the same amount. The Czech beers use a lot of hops, but they don't come off as bitter and sharp like that.
But exactly. I'm looking forward to hearing about Christopher's recipe, because as far as we know, he's using a pound of saws in like a 2-gallon batch. So I don't know. But overall, I liked it, and I gave this 37, which is
nice.
A score of very good.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said, 100%. I feel like with the mouthfeel this low, or the malt this low, the hops are coming across with a little bit of a cinnamon thing, and it's kind of very pleasant. Like it's for me, it's not a German Pils, but what it is very good. It's something completely different, and
spiciness.
Just like a tiny, like not like it's cinnamon,
imperial cinnamon.
Yeah, but
I could get that.
It's just like a hint of it, and it's it's very good. I could honestly sit. This would be my beer. I could sit.
Summer beer. Yeah.
I'm guessing it's low ABV, and it's easy to drink, and it tastes very, very good. Chris, what's the alcohol in this?
Yeah, I'm getting the cinnamon there.
Yeah, it's 5 1/4 actually. So
Wow.
Not as low as you'd like it to be.
Yeah, I would have guessed, honestly.
4.5 at the most.
I was going to say 4 for sure.
Yeah.
Damn, bro.
Sounds like somebody got owned. And it wasn't Christopher.
Brian's
We're
trying
all
to
wrong.
Brian's trying to be cool again. Do me a favor, man. What's your recipe for this, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did 9 pounds of German Pilsner. This is a 5-gallon batch, by the way. Did 1 ounce of German traditional at 60 minutes, 90-minute boil. And then I did 1 ounce of German Herzbrucker at 5 minutes. And then actually adjusted the water on this one. I used distilled water and added about 100 ppm sulfate and 85 ppm chloride.
Okay.
And then I used the Bohemian lager yeast with quite a big starter on that.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a pretty simple one.
Yeah. So how can he adjust the body? I wouldn't just say add base malt, right? Because that would bump the alcohol up, and I don't think you want. I think a Pilsner above 6% is insane.
I mean, I think maybe it is that just having a little more hops there is going to help it play just a little bit better.
That's sort of
so
a
it
low
did
bittering
actually-
hop bill.
Sorry, go ahead.
So that was kind of a low bittering hop bill.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
shouldn't-
Yeah.
I agree. It shouldn't
I
come
was
off as
just gonna say,
super bitter, but
It did finish really low. It started at 10:43 and ended at 10:03. So that's
wow.
at the
Jeez.
very bottom. Yeah, it's super, super dry. So I think maybe finishing a little bit higher might help.
So what? Some like carafoam or carapil or something? Just some body.
Well, just
in
getting
there?
it to finish just a little higher and not dry all the way out to bone dry.
So how do you do that?
Well, go against our usual advice and maybe not. I mean, it might be that it was over pitched and just went crazy and drove it all the way down there. But I wouldn't suggest backing way off on the yeast amount. But in this case, if it was that massive pitch that you used, I mean, wow, it did a good job of getting the lager to go and do what it was supposed to. But maybe the yeast got a little lazy and kicked off a little more sulfur, and doing just a little less and dialing that back could dry it out a little less and maybe even fix the sulfur, and just then just let it lager a little bit longer. You can leave it on there a little bit longer. But yeah, I don't know. It's wow.
Or like you were saying, Brian, maybe a little carapils, carafoam. This
those
would be
seem
not
like
quite as fermentable.
Yeah.
That's a good idea, Brian.
But I want to go back a little bit to because Brian, you were talking about the water with regard to the bitterness.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the 100 ppm of sulfites.
Sulfate.
Sulfate.
Yeah, that
Sorry,
seems fine.
Sulfite's a different thing that gives you a headache. And 85 ppm of the chlorides.
Chloride.
And I'm wondering, because that's kind of a close to 1-to-1. I mean, what do you think? Would you back off for a higher perceived bitterness? Would you back off a little on the chlorides, maybe to 50 ppm?
Yeah, I mean, the chloride's going to round out what sweetness is there, but in this case, what sweetness is left is very little anyway. So,
yeah, that's true.
You want to just, get to the right calcium level for this and have it maybe be balanced more to the sulfates, which it slightly is, but, I don't know that the chlorides are too high necessarily. It's not unreasonable level. But,
Okay.
playing around with the water a little bit, I would say that's probably part of the key here. But, yeah, also just not having it dry out to almost zero. That's probably the key here.
Chris,
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I differ. Sorry, I disagree with you a little in that I think that a German Pils really should be really well attenuated.
Well, yeah, it should be dry.
And I'm always wary of, especially at a homebrew level, having people back off on their pitch.
Yeah.
And I guess because
I hesitate to say that too.
And I'm not trying to be a jerk about it or anything. I'm just, I don't know. I'm thinking out loud here that I really like the attenuation on this beer.
Right.
And maybe it was just such. I mean, we weren't there. Maybe it was just such a massive pitch, because you can overpitch even at a homebrew level.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen that much.
Well, that was going to be my question to Chris. Chris, do you feel like you overpitched, or it was too much yeast, or what's your gauge on that?
I'm not sure. So I actually this was like a 2-stage starter. So I did, my first one was like 1.3 liters, and then I bumped that up put that into a 3.5 liter starter.
Wow.
So it's a lot of,
that's a lot of work for
yeast
one
for sure.
One beer. You're making 3 beers to get to the one. Yeah.
And what was the batch size again? Sorry.
He said 5.
It was 5 gallons.
Yeah.
Is that too much? Is that too much yeast in a 5-gallon batch?
Well, did you pour off the wort and just kind of keep the slurry from your yeast starter?
Yeah, I definitely decanted. And I did pitch it 50, which I know is not high for lager, so I was hesitant to.
That should be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Pretty
gonna
good.
go back to a deep cut here on air as opposed to the one from off air before.
Yeah.
And when back when Doc was on the session,
Mm-hmm.
and he was brewing a lot of lagers, 10 years ago, he would talk about making these ginormous starters for a 10-gallon batch. He would have almost like a 2-gallon starter, and of course he'd pour off, he'd crash it, get all the yeast out of it. But he would make these gigantic starters and have award-winning lager.
Yeah.
So I mean, to me, that sounds like an appropriate amount.
What
of
about
yeast. I mean, I'm not an expert, but it's on lagers, but it sounds like that's an appropriate amount to me.
What about the mash temp? I mean, the mash temp is the other thing you can mess with a little bit. Was it on the lower side or?
It was about 150.
150 even, yeah. I mean, you could go up to 152, and you could save a couple points of gravity that way with the same yeast and fermentation. But I mean, again, that's a fine point. It's a really nice beer, and I think we're just picking at nits here in a way. But
That's
to
what
get
the
it,
show's about, man.
No,
to
I
get it to the
appreciate
Yeah.
to the 40, getting rid of the hydrogen sulfide and giving it just a little bit more body is going to help it. That's what I think.
Okay.
What was your fermentation temperature?
Yeah, so I pitched at 50 degrees, let it sit there for about 5 days, and I slowly ramped it up to 60, let it sit there for 3 days, and then I slowly crashed it down to about 38.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, good job
over the
keeping
course
the.
of like
You know,
2
I
weeks.
also might consider, you said you used the Bohemian yeast. Now, the Bohemian implies like a Czech beer.
Hmm.
And I don't know, you might experiment with, and it sounds, I mean, this beer really was a good attenuator and, good flavor and what have you. You might try one of the more specific, just as you're experimenting and playing around with your beer, you might try more of a German style.
Use the German
yeast.
lager yeast.
You
yeah.
use the German lager yeast instead and see what kind of results that get you.
Yeah.
Weihenstephaner.
Okay.
Weihenstephaner.
Give it a shot.
Was it Mike McDowell always swears by? What is it? The White Labs Bach. What is it? The 838.
Oh yeah.
And I use that one quite a bit when I do lagers, and it works pretty well. I mean, there's a lot of options from all the major yeast manufacturers for
Yeah.
German options, but you might try one that's more specifically identified as a German yeast as opposed to a Bohemian yeast, because that might give you a little change in sulfur and a little more of a quote German flavor profile.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but Chris, this beer has definite promise, and I think.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You
Definitely.
seem like a thoughtful and deliberate brewer, and everything you do has some thought behind it. So keep exploring this path. You're doing something right here for sure, and you can dial it in and get to a competition worthy beer real quick.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, did you drop that Bourbon County for us?
No.
That's the other Chris. All right. Well
Okay.
then get out of here.
Yeah.
Any other
No one
questions?
cares, dude.
All good. Did it help?
Yeah, you good? You straight?
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
All right.
Really appreciate
Cheers.
it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for staying up.
Thanks,
with
man.
us.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
See you, Chris.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, that was a good beer. I
Yeah.
swear to God, I did
Yeah.
not think that was 5.5%.
No, me neither.
It's almost a cruel joke
Seems light.
because it was perfect.
Well, yeah.
I thought
For-
it's really hard to make a lager, and for this being his second lager, it's really, really well done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. All right, we're going to take a quick break, everybody, and we're going to come back. We're going to try some Ameican Strong Ale with another Chris on Dr. Homebrew. Hang on. Hey, everybody, thanks a lot for tuning in or staying with us or doing whatever you're doing, man. I appreciate it.
Epic cursing on JP's part during the break.
I don't know, man. Every time I figure out I'm going to have to do a bunch of work, I hate it. I hate it.
Stupid work.
Work is dumb, dude.
Work sucks.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever. We got Chris back on the line from the earlier show. Chris, are you awake still?
Oh yeah, I'm still here.
Hell yeah,
Cool.
dude. You're like, yeah, man, what am I doing? I'm going to sleep.
pro.
What are you talking about?
So, Chris, while I'm thinking about it, I totally forgot to ask you in the last show because we haven't recorded one of these for so long. Are you in a homebrew club?
No, I'm a lone wolf.
That's three in 2 episodes. You guys should all get together from this episode and the previous episode and start your own homebrew club. And I'm going to give you the name free of charge. Just use this. You'll be called the Lone Wolves.
That's
I travel so much for work.
This is gold, and I'm just giving it away. So you're
That
the
is
Lone
true.
Wolves.
Never has so much gold been given away.
The brewers formerly known as the Lone Wolves.
Exactly. Well,
Right.
you remember the X-Files, and there was that awful spin-off called The Lone Gunman, and there were those 3 idiots that were all buddies,
Yeah.
and they were
What's
together.
going on, Brian?
They were the Lone Gunman. It's funny.
We got a gusher.
A little gusher? All right. That's all right. That's all right. That happens. Hopefully.
Little gusher.
That's what she
Yeah.
said.
All right.
Sorry,
All right,
it must
Mr.
be late
Sharp.
in the second show if I'm busting
Yeah.
that one out. That was
For sure.
beneath the dignity of Dr. Homebrew. I apologize on
Are
behalf
you saying
of...
I opened that beer
Brewing Network.
prematurely?
No, I would not say that to you to your face in person. that wouldn't be appropriate.
All right, Brian Sharp, start us off here, bud.
Please.
All right, so this was a little bit of a gusher on opening here in the studio. I had that at home a little earlier today. The aroma, hop aroma is kind of medium citrusy. Had a low to medium ethanol aroma, which is consistent with this being Ameican Strong Ale. Surprisingly, kind of a low malt aroma, and no off aromas. And I'll just say up front, it's interesting. Usually you have a gusher, whether it's a mild gusher or not, and it usually implicates wild yeast, wild bacteria. You
Yeah.
have some form of phenol.
I almost always
Typically-
expect a phenolic,
Yeah.
like gnarly,
Plastic, smoky, maybe some
Clove.
sour, whatever. This is
Medicine.
still clean.
Yeah.
This is still a clean beer. So, and I'll skip ahead a little bit. This is a strong ale. A lot of fermentables in here. A lot of things. I suspect that your fermentation wasn't quite done when you packaged, but your packaging technique is sanitary enough that your yeast in suspension continued the fermentation without the wild stuff making it phenolic and nasty.
So, Chris, we'd like to thank you for keeping your package sanitary. We hope you didn't use any Starsen or PBW to make that happen. But
This is the end of the second show, isn't it? This is kind of what happens. But yes, we always. It sounds like this is 2 shows in a row that this could be a Manscaping live read.
again with the Manscaped, yeah.
Exactly.
Let's not give any free plugs here, Brian.
All right.
Come on, let's
The
go.
ball
We got
barber.
to give them a taste, so they
Yeah.
might want to sponsor this. Okay, appearance. So I gave the Aroma 7 out of 12. Appearance 3 out of 3. Head is medium, and actually in this the pour we just had, the head is gigantic. Kind of an ivory color, very persistent. This beer, this sample is a little more murky than the one that I had at home, but it was never crystal clear. There's some haze here, not like in a hazy IPA sense, but there is some sort of a murkiness to this. Color's medium amber. I had given the appearance 3. If I were scoring this sample here, I might give it more of a 2 due to the sort of murkiness of this sample, but I'm going to keep this at what I scored it. Flavor. Flavor starts off with kind of a low caramel toffee malt character. In mid-palate, the bitterness rises to kind of balance, maybe even a little bit more than balance. It's really well attenuated. The finish is long, and it's balanced toward bitterness. I'm going to take a sip of this one as opposed to the one that I had about 3 hours ago. Hang on just a second, because there's nothing like dead air while some guy's drinking beer.
It happens a lot here, and we've come to embrace it.
The hop flavor is fairly low. A little more would be desirable for this style. I gave this a 10 out of 20. Mouthfeel, what's really interesting is this, probably because the head on this one was so huge, and this did gush somewhat, but the one that I had at home did also. The body is really kind of almost characterize this as watery, not because of the body per se, but because the carbonation on this is super low in this sample. The one that I scored earlier had medium carbonation. I'd say medium body. I'm going to stick with that. There's low warming, which is kind of surprising. For a strong ale, I expected more of a warming sensation. Not creamy. I got a slight perception of astringency from alcohol. Again, I'm not getting that from this sample. And there's probably some bottle-to-bottle variation in, especially I'm curious about your packaging and how that happened. There can be stratification when you're bottling, whether you're bottling from the keg or especially if you're bottling from the fermenter. You can get some stratification in terms of alcohol depending on how long it takes and so forth. I give it 4 out of 5. Overall impression, despite being a gusher, I didn't get off flavors on this sample or on the one that I had at home. So again, your packaging process is really, you've got good control over your sanitation, and that's an excellent foundation for anything you're doing in home brewing. For an Ameican Strong, I really want more malt complexity, hop flavor, and hop aroma. One of the classic examples is the Stone Arrogant Bastard. And this is certainly not every Ameican Strong has to be a clone of Arrogant Bastard. I'm not saying that at all. But
right.
The Bastard has, it's big, right? It's got a lot of complexity in the flavor and the aroma, not just in hops, but of malt. And I'm just not quite getting that from this beer. And I think maybe something that might solve some of those issues is making sure that you've got the beer fully fermented before you bottle. Thankfully, this is not. There was just a little bit of a gusher. There was not an issue of overpressure, bottle bombs, what have you. But there's a not just a flavor, but a safety issue for yourself and for others when you're bottling.
No ceilings were harmed in the opening of this beer.
No closets, no ceilings, what have you. And it's, I think, especially when you're making a big beer like this, you want to either make sure it's sitting in that fermenter for a couple of weeks, you've got a good fermentation. Better yet, use your refractometer, use your hydrometer, check it, check your OG, check your final gravity, see if the beer is down to where you think it ought to be based on the published attenuation percentage of your yeast. And if it's not quite there, maybe warm it up a little bit, wait a little longer, do something, and be sure it's fully fermented out before packaging. So overall impression was a 5. Overall gave it a 29. That's a score of good. Nothing really, I think, bad about this beer. It just needs some fine tuning to get to being a really good example of the style.
Yeah. Agreed.
Tell us how you really feel, Brian.
That's my job. I told you how I really felt.
All right, Cooper.
You do such a nice job of being diplomatic here. I'm going to give you the straight scoop here. No,
he's been through a divorce. What do you want?
Okay. So yeah, the foam crept up out of the neck upon opening, and it's hard as a judge not to let that color your impressions of the beer. And I wanted to find that nasty, gnarly, plasticky, or medicinal phenolic in the beer, and likewise, I did not. It was not there. So had it open with a nice, slightly fruity, medium-high, piney, resiny hop notes up front, low caramelly, like bready and toasty malt in the nose. The hops and the malt are kind of nice in a nice balance with each other. There's some firm alcohol apparent, not too heavy, but it's there. Again, I was searching for the phenolic. I really don't think it was there, but I wrote faint phenolic. No, I think it was just like I convinced myself that the resiny hop character was maybe a little phenolic, but it wasn't. I was looking for something that wasn't there, but the aroma was pretty inviting, but there was something that just maybe seemed a little out of place. Again, I'm trying to find that gnarliness.
Can't find it.
It's appearance wise. This is where I can knock it down. The head was interesting. It came up as a massive frothy attack of very large bubbles, ensuing immediately upon pouring, and it rises up and then it fades really quick as it's just like as one of those heads just like comes up and then it goes down.
Yeah, they were like thick, bigger bubbles.
Bigger
right,
bubbles, and they dissipate and they kind of crackle and pop and fall apart. So like there's not enough something in the proteins is kind of broken down that won't sustain the head. So I don't know what's going on in there, but it faded really quick. It's pretty murky. Both samples I had were very hazy. There's a lot in suspension here.
So maybe it was a little
Brian
contamination.
struggled to get down to a 2 on appearance, but I knocked it straight down to a 1. I'm sorry.
You show no mercy, man.
I give 1 point for clarity, 1 point for the head, and 1 point for the color being right.
But here's my head. I
basically.
mean, it's still there.
Yeah, yours is all right.
Yeah.
So, okay. Maybe I can go 1 1/4.
There we go. See, Chris, don't ever say I don't battle for you, buddy.
But flavor-wise, I got into the flavor. It's pretty nice. It has a pleasant kind of dark caramelly malt with a little resiny, piney hop.
I agree.
That's at a medium-high level, as it should be. Fairly firm bitterness. Finishes semi-dry. Actually, pretty dry. I don't know. What do you think? JP, dry?
Yeah, I think it's a little too dry.
It's pretty dry.
It's a little, in the aroma, I get like a little plum.
Yeah, so
like
I'm getting
fruity, but stone fruity, and I think that kind of just, I don't know. I would bet there's a little contamination, but I think there's too much malt going on. Because isn't a little cloudiness sort of indicative of
it can be
something living in there?
Yeah, it's not necessarily.
So you got the cloudiness, you got the attack, the strong attack of the head,
the creeping up in the neck,
but no off flavors detectable. But I think because there's so much going on in this beer, maybe you can't taste
it's
it.
hidden. Yeah. So there is some sweetness in the beer that comes from the caramelly stuff in there, I believe.
Yeah. And that's very pleasant. It's like toasty and
being over, maybe a little over attenuated, it still has enough sweetness to kind of rescue that. It seems like it was a cleanly fermented ale otherwise, with some, a little bit of fruitiness in there. And in a way, though, I don't know. I don't want to say watery because it's a kind of a big beer, but like
that's not watery, but
no,
thin
is maybe a better word. And when I expect, and I love Arrogant Bastard, when I drink an Ameican Strong ale, it's hard for me not to compare it to that. And that always has it's a semi-dry finish in that beer, but it has the impression of sweetness and boldness and richness. And I even like them as they age past the date that it says on the bottle not to drink them past. Sometimes I like them better then because that has that malty sweetness that comes across.
Sure.
And the hops have mellowed out a little bit, and it's in a nicer balance for me.
What can we do here? Or what did you give it? Sorry.
So, mouthfeel-wise, medium-bodied, should be fuller, just a bit of a bite, but not harshly astringent. There's no creaminess, pretty low warmth. Overall, it's a good attempt at Ameican Strong Ale, just mostly feels lighter than it should be, and a bit, over-attenuated, I guess. The hops you used are nice. The malts are pretty nice, too. But, I struggled with this one to give good feedback. Work to fix that haze, of course. And I don't know, something with the proteins or something that's not that the head did such a weird thing.
See, I mean, Brian and I, in our glasses, we still have head. You do not.
I don't know.
That's very weird.
Yeah, and the one
but
that
you
I
had the first
earlier,
pour. I wonder if that had anything to do with it.
Yeah.
The top third of the bottle is it? Yeah, I don't know. I can pour some more. I gave it a 30 though. It's just not quite there. I think I'd like a little more firmly rich malt and alcohol, and yeah.
You beat that up more than me, and you gave it a point higher than I did.
Well, I don't know. I like the
that's me
style.
being diplomatic, I guess. Well, I mean, it's kind. Is it compare it to your kick my own ass ale, right?
No, yeah, it's probably better than the one I had on the other show. But I really like the hops that were used in this beer. I'd like to know what was in there. Is it like a Chinook or something? A little gnarly and kind of grape. There's a grapefruitiness in there that I like with the resin.
Yeah.
So, what kind of hops were used? What did it finish at? I'd really like to know.
All right. Well,
what
let's
was the recipe.
Let's get the recipe, Chris.
All right, so you guys pretty much nailed it. Again, you guys are pretty amazing. I was trying to emulate the Arrogant Bastard clone, and I did have some issues. I'll run through the recipe, then I'll tell you about my bottling. And I think I know where the issue is, because I couldn't find any out-of-place things that call for a contamination, but I did have some bottling issues. But so my grain bill, once again, was a 2.5 gallon batch from the Pbw. I used 8.5 pounds of American 2-row, and then I did a half a pound of the Belgian Special B. I mashed in at 148 degrees for 60 minutes, and then I did all Chinook hops, starting at the 60-minute boil with a quarter ounce, and then I did a half ounce at 45, a half ounce at 15, and then a half ounce at 5 minutes in the boil.
Such a distinctive hop. Thank you. I love Chinook in this beer, though. That the hop is what partially rescues this.
Yeah, and I love Arrogant Bastard, and I just when I tasted it, I brewed this in the beginning of September, and I just had I tasted good, but it's just definitely not there. It's not. It doesn't. I've had both Arrogant Bastards. I even found some in the store that was relatively similar in date of when I brewed, and I knew I was off.
Yeah.
But it's kind of there, but it's not there.
Right.
So I used the WLP 007 dry English ale yeast. The original gravity was a 1062. I finished at a 1010. So that dried out pretty good. But I think to get to my bottling, once again from the previous show, I was telling you about my stout, but this one here once again is I kept losing carbonation in my kegs, and for some reason it was just I couldn't. There was no leak or there was no nothing, so I had to abandon and I had to do bottle conditioning. But what was really weird is that this beer already had some carbonation in it, but it wasn't fully carbonated, so I ended up putting in the dextrose and bottled from there. And I think I just over-carbonated the beer. And I think that's where I got a lot of my issues, because I couldn't find any off flavors, but I just think that's where I missed completely, because even I have two more at my house, and when I open them up, it's the same thing. It's it feels like it's just got that bittering from the carbonation. It's just I feel like it's almost like a Belgian style and not really an ale. And it makes it feel really thin.
Carbonic bite and just I mean, carbon dioxide in water is an acid. It's a solution. It's acidic. It's a weak acid, but it is acidic, and it makes it sharper than the beer would otherwise be, for sure.
I have a dumb question for you. Did you follow Jamil's recipe for the Arrogant Bastard clone from Can You Brew It?
The last recipe I tried to follow. This is my second attempt, and the first time I did it, I put too much Special B in. I don't know what I did. I must have been really high that day.
Oh, every home brewer does at least one beer with too much Special B. It's a rite of passage.
But it gives it that nice raisiny note in there that you want. So I mean, that's you want a little Special B in this beer for sure. Would you lighten it up, Brian?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Would you guys bump up the Special B on this? Because the last time, I think I did 11%, and it was just
never do 11%. Oh, God, no. 11%. But what percentage of Special B is it now?
It's a half a pound out of a 9-gallon or a 9-pound batch.
I wouldn't go much higher than that. I mean, if you want more Special B, maybe add another ounce or two, but man, little of that goes. I think you're probably about the upper limit of Special B right now.
You don't want any more.
No.
I mean, maybe some Crystal Malt, then maybe bump that
Yeah.
up a little bit, but Special B is...
Yeah, like a Crystal 180 or something, 150,
Yeah,
like a little of
120,
that, 120, like
even
a high
even
level
at
bond
80,
crystal that's going to give you some more layering of flavors that isn't going to be Special B.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would even go like say a 75, 80 maybe, because you want
like
something
that.
in the mid range.
Something maybe 100-ish.
Did you have
but not,
what crystals did you have in there? I know you said Chris, but I tuned out.
I had no crystal in there, just a Special B.
Okay, well,
And
yeah,
the
then you could do what I was talking about. I think on either with the I forget what I was talking about, but do a Crystal 40 and a Crystal 80.
Okay.
And the Special B, so you can layer some of those in there.
Staggered crystals.
Yeah, or a Crystal 40 and a Crystal 120. You should also go back to the Colin Kaminsky show years and years ago, his 100-grain recipe. If you can sit and do it for 10 minutes.
This is the Deep Cuts show.
Yeah, it works really well where you break down the percentages into single grains. So if you have, 60% of your beer is, Maris Otter, you have 60 grains of Maris, and then you take all those in your hand and you just put them in your mouth and you sort of chew it and you just let the saliva break down the starches and sort of convert this. It kind of gets a little sweeter. And you get a pretty decent idea of at least the layering qualities in this.
Yeah, I love
it. It might
Colin.
work. It might not. I mean, you'll have 3 crystal malts in there at that point, and that might not be good for your teeth, but...
Yeah. So my malt bill for my kick your own ass is 84% 2-row, 10.6% Crystal 90, 3.6% flaked oats, 1.8% dark Munich, with a little acid malt to get the mash pH down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just what Pbw did with what I gave them for my Arrogant Bastard clone, and it's kind of amped up from there. But anyone's interested can try the Kick Your Own Ass Ale on there and brew it better than I did. And not let your yeast sit around for too long and without refrigerating it, and you'll hopefully have good results.
Yeah.
But have some fun with it and take this recipe and twist it around a little bit, and I think you've got a good start for sure. Like the hops are right. Just something a little weird with the overcarbonation is playing weirdly with it. So
yeah, and I think it's one of the it's always frustrating when you have keg issues and whatever. So kudos to you for sticking with it and not just dumping everything. And it's stuff like that. You just got to deal with it when you're home brewing, and it's part of in some sense part of the fun of the hobby is you got to figure out how to deal with things when they go wrong. Not that we don't all have jobs and we have to figure out how we deal with stuff when it goes wrong.
It's true.
But you got to just figure out how to handle it. You did a good job with that, and I think just fixing those issues, which you'll get that chased down and worked out.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that is going to probably buy you 5+ points on your beer right there with nothing else.
For sure. Chris, do you have anything else that has not been said before already?
No, I think I'm pretty good. If you guys think that the hop schedule is good and it had a good presence in there, because I've been struggling with the Pbw. I feel like with my old system, I was getting more hop flavor and aroma, where now with the Pbw, I feel like I'm missing it. But everybody else tells me my beers are good. But if you guys are saying that I had a good schedule and a good presence in them, then maybe it's just my palate and I need to adjust a little bit.
you can set the Pico up to do a little whirlpool too, and there's with you have the Zymatic or the Z. What are you working with?
I have the Zymatic.
The Zymatic, yeah. So you can actually set it up and just pull out set up a pause in the thing and set it up so it'll do a whirlpool at 185 for 20 minutes, and you just pull the whole thing out, put the whole thing back in loaded with hops, and let it go with that too. I mean, I've had mixed results with it. Sometimes it comes through right. I do agree. Sometimes with the Pbw, it's like the hops just instantly vanish because the wort is flowing through it, and then the wort moves somewhere else, and it's as if the hops all disappeared from your quote kettle. So it's kind of a different animal, and you have to work with it to get the hop levels right on some of these really hoppy beers. But it's it's worth the challenge. You can definitely get there.
Yeah, it's like anytime you change your brewing system or brewing equipment, you make a major change. you have to get used to it. And there are unexpected changes to your workflow and everything else. And like my first time was like, oh crap. I mean, it's simple, and I'm back to doing in my kitchen. And there's just things that I was so used to doing outdoors in a 10-gallon batch that all of a sudden I'm scrambling to do whatever in my kitchen and it's not that it's good or bad, it's just different, and it takes some time to get used to the differences.
That's right, Chris. Don't ever forget that. These are life lessons.
I appreciate it.
We're not just doctors of homebrew. We're doctors of life.
That's true.
Like Dr. Phil.
That's true.
Thanks for being so receptive to our bagging on your beers today. But no, I mean, really,
No,
you're doing
great.
it. Your beers are clean. You're doing a good job. And
Yeah, man.
And again, mostly just a balance issues and a little carbonation issue.
Yeah, please send us some more of your beers. In 2020, we look forward to drinking some of those.
Is this one a public recipe, by the way?
This is a public recipe
What?
too. Yeah.
The name of this beer is
This is called Captain Chinook.
Captain Chinook.
All right. I love it. All right, Chris, if that's it, we'll let you go, man.
All right, thanks guys. Have
All
a
right,
good
dude.
night.
Cheers.
Later, man.
Good night.
Thanks, Chris.
Excellent.
Or morning, where he is.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. This has been Dr. Homebrew for January. I appreciate you very much for tuning into this show. If you want to get on the show, like Brian was saying earlier, email brian@thebrewingnetwork.com. The show can't exist without you. So if you want to hear more fun stuff like this, take a gamble. Send in your beer. We're not all that bad. It's
Brian,
all fine.
Brian with an I, by the
Brian
way.
with an I.
Don't email the Y guy. He won't answer you.
Don't do that. Oh, you might. You never know.
Email it to the correct spelling of Brian.
There you go.
Right.
With the I.
Right.
All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning in. And until next time, we'll see you.